Are the Bulls about to sabotage their own rebuild by chasing fool's gold in Sacramento? Let me hit you with some brutal honesty right out of the gate. There's a dangerous whisper circulating through NBA front offices that could derail everything the Chicago Bulls have carefully constructed this season. The rumor mill is churning, and Domantas Sabonis' name keeps surfacing as the next savior destined for the Windy City. But here's the cold, hard truth that should make every Bulls fan's blood run cold. This trade would be an absolute disaster. The Bulls have finally stumbled upon something resembling a coherent identity this season. They're young, they're hungry, and they're building around legitimate talent without mortgaging their future. Josh Giddey has been nothing short of sensational, flirting with All-NBA production and orchestrating an offense that's exceeded every reasonable expectation. The supporting cast is clicking, the chemistry is palpable, and the franchise sits at a crossroads where patience could yield extraordinary dividends. So naturally, the basketball gods have decided to test Chicago's resolve by dangling yet another aging all-star in front of them like a shiny object before a distracted child. The Sacramento disaster that everyone saw coming. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The Sacramento Kings are imploding. At 5-13 through 18 games, they're not just underperforming, they're careening toward organizational chaos with the reckless abandon of a runaway freight train. This is a franchise that assembled one of the 5 oldest rosters in the entire league, with an average age exceeding 28 years, and somehow convinced themselves that veteran experience alone would translate to winning basketball. The Kings' roster construction reads like a cautionary tale about the dangers of win-now desperation. Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook, and Sabonis, all talented players in their own right, all aging assets whose trade value diminishes with every loss. Sacramento mortgaged flexibility for immediate gratification, and now they're staring down the barrel of a potential fire sale that could reshape the Western Conference landscape. And here's where Chicago enters the conversation, because apparently some decision-makers believe the Bulls should rescue Sacramento from their self-inflicted mess by absorbing Domantas Sabonis. The proposed framework? Send Nikola Vucevic, a promising young guard, and draft capital to Sacramento in exchange for Sabonis. On paper, to the casual observer scrolling through Twitter at 2 a.m., this might seem reasonable. You're getting younger at the center position, acquiring a 2-time All-Star who averaged over 19 points and 12 rebounds in each of the last few seasons, and adding a proven commodity to accelerate your competitive timeline. But dig deeper. Just scratch beneath that superficial surface, and this trade reveals itself as fool's gold wrapped in all-star packaging. The defensive nightmare nobody wants to discuss. Here's the uncomfortable reality that Sabonis apologists conveniently ignore. The man is a defensive liability of catastrophic proportions. Last season, he ranked in the bottom 5 among starting centers in defensive rating. Let that sink in for a moment. Among the 30 starting centers in the NBA, Sabonis was among the 5 worst at preventing opponents from scoring. But wait, it gets worse. His opposing field goal percentage allowed was similarly abysmal, meaning players actively targeted him in the paint, knowing they could score with relative ease. In today's NBA, where versatility and switchability define championship-caliber defenses, acquiring a center who can't protect the rim is organizational malpractice. Now, I know what you're thinking, but doesn't Vucevic have similar defensive limitations? Absolutely correct. Vucevic is no defensive savant himself, which raises the obvious question: why would Chicago trade one defensively challenged center for another, younger defensively challenged center, while simultaneously surrendering valuable assets in the process? Trading Vucevic for Sabonis doesn't solve Chicago's defensive issues, it merely rearranges the deck chairs on the Titanic while the ship continues sinking. You're not getting better, you're getting different, and different doesn't win championships when the fundamental problems remain unaddressed. The offensive redundancy that kills ball movement beyond the defensive concerns lies an even more insidious problem: offensive redundancy. Sabonis, for all his playmaking brilliance and triple-double flirtations, operates best with the basketball in his hands. He's a high-usage center who orchestrates offense through the elbow, distributing to surrounding scorers and controlling possessions like a point guard trapped in a big man's body. Giddey has thrived this season precisely because Chicago's offensive system empowers him to be the primary facilitator, the conductor orchestrating a symphony of ball movement and player motion. He's averaging near triple-double production, elevating his teammates, and demonstrating the court vision that made him a lottery pick. His development has been the single most encouraging storyline of Chicago's season. Now, imagine cramming Sabonis into that ecosystem. You'd have two high-usage playmakers competing for the same offensive real estate, both requiring the ball to maximize their effectiveness, neither capable of thriving as a secondary option. The result wouldn't be synergistic collaboration, it would be stylistic collision, a basketball traffic jam where two talented players cancel each other out rather than complement one another. Championship teams are built on fit, not talent accumulation. The Golden State Warriors didn't dominate because they had the most all-stars. They dominated because their all-star skills meshed seamlessly. Steph Curry's off-ball brilliance complemented Klay Thompson's catch-and-shoot mastery, which complemented Draymond Green's defensive versatility and playmaking. Every piece fit together like a perfectly assembled puzzle. Sabonis and Giddey don't fit. They clash, and forcing them together would undermine everything Chicago has built. The three-point shooting downgrade nobody mentions. Let's address another uncomfortable truth buried in the statistical noise. Sabonis is a less efficient three-point shooter than Vucevic. In an era where floor spacing determines offensive efficiency, where championship contenders live and die by their ability to stretch defenses, downgrading your center's perimeter shooting is strategic suicide. Vucevic, despite his defensive limitations, provides reliable floor spacing that opens driving lanes for Giddey, Kobe White, and Chicago's perimeter attackers. Remove that spacing, replace it with Sabonis' more limited range, and suddenly the paint becomes congested, driving lanes evaporate, and the entire offensive ecosystem suffers. This isn't theoretical abstraction, it's mathematical reality. Offensive efficiency correlates directly with three-point shooting volume and accuracy. Teams that can't space the floor can't compete for championships. It's that simple. So again, we return to the fundamental question. Why would Chicago sacrifice shooting, defensive capability, and stylistic fit while surrendering assets for a marginally younger player who doesn't address their core needs? The financial albatross waiting to strangle future flexibility, even if you could somehow rationalize the on-court concerns. And to be clear, you can't. The financial implications of acquiring Sabonis should terrify any Bulls fan concerned about long-term sustainability. Sabonis is 29 years old and commands a substantial salary that extends into his early 30s. His game relies heavily on physicality, rebounding, and paint presence, skills that typically decline with age. Meanwhile, Chicago's current roster construction provides incredible financial flexibility moving forward. Their average age sits at 25.2 years, and removing Vucevic's 35-year-old contract would reduce that figure even further. They have one player over 30, which means they're positioned to grow together, improve collectively, and potentially contend as their young core enters their prime years simultaneously. Trading for Sabonis sacrifices that flexibility. It commits significant salary cap space to an aging asset whose best years are likely behind him, whose defensive limitations will only worsen with time, and whose offensive redundancy with Giddey creates diminishing returns. Championship windows don't open through desperation trades. They open through patient roster construction, strategic asset management, and calculated risk-taking when the right opportunity presents itself. This isn't that opportunity. The pattern of all-star temptation, Chicago, must resist. This Sabonis rumor represents the third All-NBA caliber player linked to Chicago in recent weeks. First came Anthony Davis whispers, then LaMelo Ball speculation, and now Sabonis. Each rumor follows the same seductive pattern. Acquire star talent, accelerate the competitive timeline, satisfy impatient fans demanding immediate results. Anthony Davis, despite his otherworldly talent, is perpetually injured and would require surrendering Chicago's entire future for a player who might miss half the season. LaMelo Ball, while electrifying would create the same ball-dominant redundancy issues as Sabonis while costing even more in assets. And Sabonis, as we've thoroughly established, solves nothing while creating new problems. The Bulls must resist this temptation. They must trust their process, believe in their young core, and recognize that sustainable success requires patience, not panic. The NBA landscape is littered with franchises that mortgage their futures chasing immediate gratification, only to find themselves trapped in mediocrity with no assets and no hope. Chicago has escaped that trap. They've built something genuine, something sustainable, something worth protecting. Trading for Sabonis would be regression disguised as progress, a lateral move marketed as an upgrade. What Chicago should actually do, instead, if Arturas Karnisovas receives a phone call from Sacramento's front office pitching Sabonis, the response should be swift and unequivocal. Thanks, but no thanks. Instead of chasing aging all-stars who don't fit, Chicago should focus on what they've done successfully, developing young talent, maintaining financial flexibility, and building through the draft. They should target defensive-minded role players who complement Giddey's playmaking, three-point specialists who enhance floor spacing, and versatile wings who can switch across multiple positions. If they're going to trade assets, it should be for players who address actual needs, not create new problems. A rim-protecting center who can defend multiple positions. A 3-and-D wing who spaces the floor and guards opposing stars. A backup ball handler who can run the offense when Giddey rests. These aren't sexy acquisitions that generate ESPN headlines and Twitter hysteria. They're smart, calculated moves that build championship infrastructure brick by brick, possession by possession, season by season. That's how sustainable success is built. Not through desperation trades for aging all-stars who don't fit your timeline or your system. The Domantas-Sabonis trade rumor represents everything wrong with modern NBA discourse. The obsession with star names over actual fit, the prioritization of immediate gratification over long-term planning, the belief that talent alone conquers all obstacles. Chicago has something special brewing. Josh Giddey is blossoming into a legitimate star. The supporting cast is young, talented, and improving. The financial flexibility is pristine. The future is genuinely bright. Trading for Sabonis would jeopardize all of it. It would sacrifice defensive capability for offensive redundancy, surrender assets for marginal upgrades, and commit long-term money to an aging player whose skills don't mesh with the franchise cornerstone. If Sacramento calls, Chicago should let it go to voicemail. This is one trade rumor that deserves to die in the rumor mill, forgotten and unlamented. The Bulls have worked too hard, rebuilt too carefully, and positioned themselves too strategically to blow it all on fool's gold from Sacramento. So, what do you think? Should Chicago even consider this move? Or is standing pat the only intelligent option? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this analysis valuable, smash that like button to let me know you want more hard-hitting basketball truth that cuts through the noise.